Is my video not working? I'll figure it out. Go ahead.
That sounds good because it's supposed to. That's why it's not working.
I'll get
good morning. Sounds good. Thank you. Good morning and welcome everybody to the Nonpartisan Legislative 101 session hosted by the Cedar Rapids Civil Rights Commission. My name is Stephanie Munsterman-Scriven, and I have the honor of serving as the Executive Director of our commission. Thank you so much, audience, for your choosing to attend today. And we are honored that you chose to spend your time with us and to learn with us at this event. As we all well know, legislation has a huge impact on our daily lives. And so it's important that we as individuals understand the process so we can be engaged in issues that affect us and with our policymakers. Voting is the language of American democracy, and we each have the duty to vote, and the right to vote is a civil right. So again, thank you for those who are participating in this audience. I will introduce our panelists in a moment, but I want to talk about the flow just of the event a little bit. Today, we're going to discuss what can we do to ensure that we are effectively communicating with our policymakers so we're able to share our stances, our opinions, our thoughts, or our needs. What are the processes of state cycles and differences? I might be older than some, but I don't know if you remember how a bill became a law before your Saturday cartoons. That song still runs in my head, but it's easy to forget if you don't work in it every day of how does that process work? And then how do we as residents stay informed? There's so much going on with new bills and proposed bills that are pending or currently going through legislation process. So how do we learn what is happening? How do we stay on top of all of those things that are going through the legislation? So for the flow of our event, as the moderator, I will ask questions that pertain specifically to these topics first. After we do address these topics, if there are additional questions from the audience, you are welcome to place them in the Q&A chat box. If you have questions afterwards, feel free to shoot those to us. I do want to take a moment for a very friendly reminder that this is a nonpartisan workshop. It is only about process and engagement. We will not be discussing specific issues or specific bills. That is hopefully something you can learn how to do today. So next week, you can contact your legislators with those questions or concerns. We fully understand politics can lead to very heated conversations, and that is certainly not the purpose of today's workshop. So any comments or questions that do relate to those specific issues or specific bills, we will not address those today. I'm excited to welcome our panelists today. We have a great group of individuals who represent our community, and I'm going to go through their names and they can say hello. Regional Director for United States Senator Chuck Grassley, Rochelle Fuller.
Hello there.
Outreach Director for United States Senator Ernst, Brittany Zumbach-Carroll.
Morning, everyone.
Iowa State Senator Liz Mathis.
Hi, everybody.
District Representative for Congresswoman Ashley Hinson, Andy Whiting.
Good morning.
And Iowa State Representative Charlie McClintock.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So again, thank you all so much for taking the time to be present with us this morning and to answer those questions that many of us have burning in our hearts. And we don't get the time or have the ability to have this face-to-face or phone-in conversations with our legislators sometimes because your schedules are incredibly busy. So I will ask a question, and as we go along, you're welcome to pop in. I'm not going to go down the line and say, what is your answer? What is your answer? What is your answer? That gets a little stagnant and boring. So I'll just ask a question, and whoever would like to jump in first, if that works for you. The first question is about engagement. What can we as residents do to ensure that we are effectively communicating with our legislators? And what way should we do it? Via email, attending subcommittee meetings, Day on the Hill events? What works best for you? What is your preference?
This is Rochelle from Senator Grassley's office. I would say all of the above, but for us here in Cedar Rapids area, you're welcome to call us. You are welcome to email us by going to grassley.senate.gov. We are more than welcome to, you're more than welcome to meet with us, give us a call, set up an appointment, or depending on the issue at hand, stop into the office. But we'd love to meet and greet with you and attending events when Senator's in town.
I was going to say, this is
Thank you.
Andy from Representative Hinson's office, and I would agree with Rochelle on that. Also, town hall meetings are another great avenue that we try to have for folks to be able to ask their questions unfiltered in a setting that the congresswoman can hear them and answer them directly. So that's also another avenue that when you see there's town halls going on, stop on by and ask your question. So
I will add one more thing to both what Rochelle and Andy spoke about. Our office and Grassley's office as well holds what we call traveling office hours at least twice a year. So we hold them in all 99 counties, and it's staff, and we go and visit those counties. So we try to be accessible as possible, that even if you live in a very rural area, we try to hold those traveling office hours and come to you instead of you having to come to us. But we do have the 5 offices across Iowa. I know Grassley's office, I think, has 6,
yes.
and Hinson's office has 3 across their district. So we do try to be accessible as possible. But all of the above, whatever works best for you, that's the best way to get information to our bosses. The other thing I will add, when you talk about, what is the best way to communicate your needs, trying to be as concise as possible, and then as well as respectful as possible. We like to say that Iowa nice goes a long way, and that means a lot to us as we interface with a lot of folks on a daily basis. So that kind of professional, wonderful communication is something we really appreciate.
And that's an excellent. So even if you disagree, you remember that they're human. So sorry, Liz, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think as a legislator, speaking personally, there are differences between attending an event like a town hall and then working on a bill. So if you're with a group that's working on something, and I see Cindy Garlock on here, the Cedar Rapids School Board, for instance, we'll have some initial meetings about what their concerns are. Maybe it's a budgetary concern, or it's something that they'd like to do that's innovative within the school district. Usually someone will reach out, we'll talk about the possibilities of putting that into a bill, or if it addresses an appropriation in some way. And then as that conversation rolls along, and I'm talking about January through April is the legislative session, and then in May, when we get out of session, those are the times where we start to meet with people for the next session. So we're sitting down talking to them about crafting legislation. So in Cindy's instance, I might sit down and talk with her about how we could put a bill together that would help Cedar Rapids, but would help several other school districts, maybe with teacher shortages or with innovative ideas that they would have that they would want an appropriation. So it starts with small conversations and then may lead to a couple of other conversations in the fall, maybe drafting that bill, sending them the draft. Does this look good? And then asking a number of other people along the way, what do you think about this? Let's have some exchange. Let's have some conversation. So there's that. If you have an idea, or you have let's say you have an opinion about something, I think what perhaps the others have talked about is attending something and voicing your concerns. And I'd say email, exactly what Rochelle said, email, phone calls, attend town halls, try to do as much as you can to get in front of your elected official to let them know just how you feel about something. The League of Women Voters Forum is an excellent example of, you get to hear kind of, their answers to different topics, and there's an exchange. You can go earlier and talk with your legislator before the panel begins, and you can talk afterwards too with them one-on-one. So I'd say, again, it's all of the above. But when you're addressing a legislator, it may be 2 different things. It may be that you need a piece of legislation. Maybe you're an individual. I've had individuals call and say, a veteran say, I'd like to get, a lifetime, freebie for trout fishing, and not have to pay for a license. Okay, well, let's write that bill. Let's see what it looks like. How many people are really, really concerned about that? How many people would enjoy that? How many people does this affect? So there's that. And then there are organizations that want to write bills with you, or groups. And then there's also the interface. So, coming to these forums and joining something like this so that you learn how to really, what the process looks like.
May I add to what Liz was saying there? And she brought up the veteran. So if someone were to go to Liz and they're a veteran, or they have a question about the IRS or about Social Security or things that are federally related issues, Liz would then email me, as I've received from different legislators in town, and I will respond through casework. We have caseworkers in our office who will handle those issues, or I will, depending on the issue, and I'll meet with that person, as we've met with veterans in our building, in the office, in the foyer area, to help them with the issues that they are dealing with.
That is good to know. I don't know if everybody's aware of how, there is state and federal, but you work so closely together.
Yes.
And that's such a great example of how it's, you're working for the betterment of our community. So thank you for sharing that example.
Stephanie, I would just add quickly, if you look in the chat, I put the basic format, at least for people like me and Liz, it's first.last@legis.iowa.gov, and that's the format for everybody. So I would be charlie.mcclintock@legis.iowa.gov. And then also the website, legis.iowa.gov. That's where every resource begins for us. So you can look at all the legislation there. You can look at us. You can look at the bills we're running, everything we do. That's kind of the starting point for everything that you would need from that website. And then the only other thing that I would add is that, not that you can't get to the other folks that are on the screen, the resources like at the congressional and Senate level at the federal level. But a lot of the times, this is my opinion, but people like the state Senate and representatives, we're probably kind of the last level where you can literally walk up to us and talk to us, or get a hold of us, or call us and email, because the federal level, so much is going on all the time. They're in session all the time. They're doing stuff all the time. And it's maybe a little bit easier to get a hold of us at the local level, because I think we're more accessible. So I say that because if you're going to, at least in my opinion, if you're going to contact us, or contact me anyway, I always tell people, cut right to the point. You don't have to explain anything to me. You don't have to give the background. I don't need a justification. We work for you. So just cut right to the point of what you want. And I'll be happy to help you in any way I can. And a lot of times email is very effective because while we're in session, we're either in committees or subcommittees, or we're debating. And we can't take phone calls on the floor, obviously, or when we're in meetings. So email is an effective tool, because if we're not watching it, our clerks are. And if the email is this long, it's hard for us to get it through. Whereas if you just, especially if you do something this long, and then at the very bottom you say, and I want you to do this, you're better off just to say, I want you to do this. And it's just as effective. So thank you.
Well, and to that point, I was just going to say to what Charlie was saying is it depends on what your question is too. So we get a lot of questions that are state questions at our office that they just reach out to us because it's the first person they thought of. And then we have to refer them to their state legislator for that, because it's not something that we can handle. So, really being thoughtful about, is this a state question? Is it a federal question? And if so, contacting the correct resource for that. Not that we can't put you in touch with that, but that's kind of confusing for you sometimes, and can also be a little annoying for you as well, because you're having to make multiple phone calls or multiple emails when really one would suffice. So that's another thing, just maybe knowing, is this a state or a federal issue, and reaching out to the proper resource for that to help you the best.
That's an excellent point, Andy. I've gotten emails where they promoted me to congressman and senator. It's like, Senator McClintock, I want you to do this. Like, oh, well, okay. Well, thanks for the pay raise, but no, that's not me. So, all right, thank you.
And if I may, to Charlie's point on the getting straight to the point, I try and convey that, depending on the issue, of course. You know, if they just have, if they just do bullet points, that helps us to get to that point, because I too, sometimes I reiterate things over and over again, and I appreciate, depending on the issue, it can be very heart-wrenching. And that person is just sharing their heart. So getting to the point, and then we can spend that time, whether it be over coffee or on the phone or emails, whichever way. So I appreciate you mentioning that, Charlie.
Now, I've heard frustration from some people that when they email their legislator, that they get a reply, an auto reply that says, and this is most likely what it is. I reply to my constituents first, and then I will try to get to your email. And so sometimes if the legislator doesn't email them back, they don't know what to do. What I've told other constituents to do is email your senator, your state senator, or your 2 House members. Even if you live in the state Senate district and don't live in one of the House districts, go ahead and email or CC the House members. And so it puts a little bit of your issue or your idea, it broadens it out than just sending it to one elected official. And more than likely you'll get an answer, and then those other electeds will be talking about that email and saying, did you respond to this person? If you did, then I won't, or maybe I'll add, to the conversation. So it's always good to not just email one legislator, but email multiples, and then you can get a conversation going. We get hundreds of emails a day, and I'm sure our federal electeds get thousands, and those are probably from all across the country. Ours are from all across the state. There have been times where I know someone isn't from my district, but they have a Medicaid question and they need resource information. I will always answer that. We try to make sure that we do. Or I'll say, I'll be happy to answer this for you, but your senator or your House member is so-and-so. And then I'll CC them on the email so that they know I've answered this person's question, and then they can build a relationship with that person in their own district.
Thank you all for sharing. I'm a bullet point thinker, and so that's how, when I send an email to my representatives, I like to do it in bullet point, because I understand your time is very valuable and very finite. And so if you get an email from me, it's usually in bullet point form. So I'm glad to know that is, it's a good idea. So thank you for sharing that, and for the other ideas of how to best engage and some timing on when to best engage. So Charlie started mentioning this a little bit about my next question about how can we as your constituents stay informed, stay on top of those proposed bills that are pending or currently going through the legislative process. I know I have a tracking sheet because that's, I work in this field, but for the everyday person, how is it best for them to keep on top of things that they might care about?
Well, I'll just add here one very easy resource that doesn't actually require you to really do much of anything is signing up for the different newsletters. It goes right to your inbox. We try to put on there pending legislation that we're working on, and it's a super helpful resource. It's something that if people ask me how they can be better informed, I tell them all the time, go to henson.house.gov and sign up for the newsletter. It'll go right to your inbox, and it will keep you informed as to what your congressperson is doing for you. So that's just a very easy thing. Doesn't require you to do much at all. Once you sign up, nothing. It just comes straight to your inbox. So that's a really helpful tool.
And you can, at a state level, you can just Google Iowa legislature, and this is what it will look like on your phone. And you can see that it's on your phone. And as you scroll down, you can see the activities of the day. And you'll also get to see what meetings are in subcommittee, what meetings are in committee, and what is going to be debated on the floor of the Senate and the House on any given day. And then when you press on it, it's kind of going down the rabbit hole. You can find more on the left side of the page about the bill's history. You can find out if there were any amendments posted. Just go ahead and start, tapping on buttons on the side, and you'll see that there's a wealth of information there. And if you want to know what Charlie and I are doing at the state Senate, you can go in where it says senators or House, and representatives. You can go in and tap on our names, and then you have a whole plethora of pieces around that, and you can say sponsored bills. You can press on that and see what bills I've sponsored, or what Charlie's been doing, or what subcommittees we're in. And so it's a really good website to access. Just Google Iowa Legislature and it'll come up, www.legis.iowa.gov.
Excellent. I think after this event, Kelly and I will work together to do a follow-up email to all of our participants with links to to each of your websites, as well as to your individual pages, as well as to any other suggestions you might have. And welcome, Representative Kirsten. It's good to see you.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invite. I had some technical difficulties, so I'm glad I'm on. And
we understand that is what I was guessing, because it's.
Yeah, I thought I could do it. I thought I could do it from my phone.
She's got my name.
Oh,
Thank
yes,
you.
are.
We're both Charlie today.
Charlie. Congratulations to Charlie as well.
Stephanie.
Sorry, Charlie sent me his link, so that's what's.
That's all
sure.
right. We can both be Charlie today.
Thank you.
Stephanie, what I'd say is also, I know me, in case people don't know, me and Stephanie work together as well. If ever you want training, or anybody does, on the Legis website, any representative or senator could do that for you, and we would be happy to do that. The site is, I wouldn't say it's complicated, but if you've never used it before, some things are hard to find if you've not done it before, for bill tracking or something like that. And there are, once you pull up a bill, I don't know, Liz can comment on this too, but moving around the journal and things like that to see how people voted, that can be a little tricky if you haven't done it before. But overall, the site's pretty intuitive on how to move across the tabs and everything. And we don't have to share a screen or something to look at it. But later on, if you want to do something different, or if you ever want to do, maybe it might be helpful if you ever wanted training on how to move around that site, just so you could pull up the bills easier and track them, see what's going on. Because again, Liz can speak for the Senate, because I think it can move in hours over there, but literally a bill could go from a sub to a committee to the floor in one day. So things could move very quickly if they needed to. So thank you.
And we try not to do that. There's supposed to be, some etiquette around, really political etiquette around when a bill is submitted to a sub, and then giving time for the public to see that and voice their opinion on it before it gets to a committee, and then before it gets. So in the instance like Charlie's talking about, that something goes very fast. I was contacted by a UNI student who was in the National Guard, and there was supposed to be tuition for him for his second semester once he returned from Afghanistan, and there was not. And it was not only happening to him, but it was 3 other students. And so we very rapidly got an emergency appropriation, supplemental appropriation to get that going, to fill that, that fund again. In order for them to sign up for school, they needed to have the money. So we did that. As Charlie says, it was a sub, it was a committee. We got it out of the Senate. We sent it over to the House, and it was signed by the governor in less than a day and a half or 2 days, so that they could go to school.
And I'll just add real quick, because I know we're about a half hour in and we're only on question 2, so just probably
That's
keep rolling.
okay.
But we have a very similar website at the federal level. It's just congress.gov. I'll put it in the chat, but essentially the exact same function. We use it as staff regularly, but you can see what our representatives are signed on to, what the senators are signed on to for co-sponsorship. You can track by bill, by portfolio, by all kinds of things, but same function. It's just congress.gov at the federal level.
And Representative Kirsten, we were talking about best ways for residents to stay on top of different issues and bills and proposals during the legislative season. To kind of get,
thank you.
Do that, but I thought it'd be good to give you kind of a little background of what we were discussing specifically.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you all inviting me to participate in this. I think again, I'm Kirsten, Running-Marquardt, state representative, west side of Cedar Rapids. The one thing, when I look kind of at all of the questions that really came out to me, was that people can work on building relationships with their legislators. And that's really key and important, so that it's not just if one issue comes up, it's that there's been trust built over, a little time at least. And sometimes I know that's hard to do, but most of the legislators, I do it often. I just got back from a coffee with a large group at Tommy's. And I know that the legislators on here as well, they too are willing to, sit down and have a coffee, or just at least meet them somewhere and say hi. And then, maybe send that email. It was nice to meet you. Give us some context of where it was. And then what issues are important to you. And that's sort of not just during the legislative session, that's the whole year, so that we're building these relationships. And so the legislators know what's important to you, and they know you too. And that I just can't stress how critical that is. Even if you don't align politically with the person, or even if the issue that you have is a tough one, it's still, most of the legislators I know, myself included, are really willing to sit down and listen, hear what you have to say. And then when that issue does come up for a vote, or in subcommittee, or when people are really talking about it, you have all this experience of that relationship that you've built and the trust that you have. And I just can't stress how important that is, to begin those relationships, find out who your state rep is, find out who your state legislator is, sort of at all levels of government. But to begin those conversations is really important. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's good to have that foundation before you start asking for things. I think, not just with you, but, in life in general. So thank you. I think we'll move on to the next question. This is kind of a logistical question of how can you explain the final process when a bill becomes a law? You don't need to sing the old song from Saturday cartoons, but what is the process from like A to Z? If you could just walk us through what that looks like, that'd be really helpful.
Is that just for me, or one of you want to go?
I'm sorry, it's for anybody on the panel who would like to pop in and share.
There's this song, it's 99 Ways to Leave Your Lover. I always think there's 99 ways to kill a bill or to bring it back up. So the general path, of course, is you get a bill request. You have a legislator make a bill request for you. Then you have to work really hard to have that bill make it through a subcommittee in a timely manner, and then the full committee in a timely manner, and then through on the floor of whatever chamber you've started in. Or sometimes you can do bills that are the same language in both chambers. And then you need to have people enough support behind it to get it passed on the floor. It's really hard sometimes to get legislation through, but just finding a couple legislators who are willing to talk with you and champion your cause. But during that process of bill request, subcommittee, committee, a floor action, and then go over to the other chamber to do the same exact thing, things change often. If it changes, it has to go back to another chamber. But at any moment, your bill can be killed. At any of those times, maybe somebody doesn't like you, or somebody's having a bad day, or the chairman of a committee is just not feeling it, and then it just doesn't move forward. So that's the generic way. You can also have stuff. There's been so many things that I've seen killed, and then all of a sudden you see them again. So leadership has the ability to bring up bills at any time. Ways and means and appropriation bills. So if you're taxing or you're spending, those don't fall under the funnel guidelines. But Senator Mathis and Representative McClintock, who's changed his name to my name, thank you, can maybe go ahead and explain more in depth.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would defer to both Kirsten and Liz because they've been there so much longer and they know everything about all the stuff. I mean, I've only been there 2 years, but one thing that I did ask when I first got up there, I was like, why is this a House file and this one is a study bill? You know, why is it, what's the difference? And they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was told anyway, and it seemed to make sense, that if it comes out of if it's a House file, it's been introduced by a legislator basically, and if it's a study bill, it came out of an organization or a department. And so that was something somebody had to educate me on when I first got there. And believe it or not, I'd been tracking bills and doing different things for years, and I never bothered to ask. So that's a difference. And I think, like Kirsten was alluding to, this could be an 8-hour class on just how legislation works and all the different nuances and how bills can be done at the end and who can do them and when the cutoff days are and the funnels and the different, and what a legislator can do and what a chair can do. And I'll turn it over to Liz.
Yeah, you know what, I'm still baffled sometimes when I'll say, what bill number was that? Oh, it's Senate file. Well, wait a minute, now it's House file, you know, so the numbers can change. So it can start out as a study bill, and then it moves into a Senate file. And then, so that's why it's so important when you look this up, that you go over to that left side and click on bill history. And the bill history will show you all the movement. And the most important thing is to follow the date. So it'll say when the date the bill was filed. So let's say the date the bill was filed was on January 10th, our first date of session. Then you can kind of watch how that bill went through the process and where it jumped to. And then all of a sudden, if you open that up and it says bill history and there are only 3 lines, the bill is dead. I mean, it's, you know, it hasn't moved since January 10th. Then you know that the committee chair didn't move it forward. There, you know, you try to have conversations with the committee chair to move your bill forward. And obviously there wasn't enough appetite from the chair to do that. Or maybe just like what Kirsten is saying, you know, there's maybe a misunderstanding about the bill, or the chair's having a bad day or whatever it is. There are always these vehicles. So maybe you have this bill, you have this idea, and you see another bill go by that's the title page matches the bill that you wanted to, you know, to run. And maybe the chair wouldn't run it, but maybe you think you have enough votes across the aisle and in your caucus to get that, at least the guts of that bill onto, as an amendment onto another bill. So you're always watching for a train going by, you know, maybe it's the same kind of wording on the title page that matches the same kind of wording on your bill, and you could make it into an amendment. And then there are other pieces of your bill. Let's say the most important piece of your bill, you can really synthesize that down into maybe 3 or 4 sentences and try to get that onto another bill. So there are always ways. If people say, oh, the bill's dead, well, how else can you rework this bill? If there's really something that you want in this, maybe it's the appropriation. Maybe, you know, the chair doesn't want to spend that much, or maybe it doesn't fit in with, you know, the things that he or she might be thinking of. That's why it's important when you're a ranking member, and we all are, except, well, Charlie's not. Charlie could be a chair or the chair, but to talk to your chair and sit down at the beginning and say, okay, here's kind of what our caucus wants to do. What do you see? What do you envision, you know, your legislative, you know, your legislative ideas this year are going to encompass? Well, Jeff Edler is the chair of Health and Human Services, and I work very closely with him. And strangely enough, his list and my list, there were probably 5 things that matched. So, okay, those become our priorities together, and how can we get that done? So there was one that was therapeutic foster care. And that's hugely important right now when we're transitioning from group foster care to families first legislation, where, you know, kids are going to be helped more at home than in a residential setting, a group home setting. And so therapy for learning therapeutic foster care would be very important for these high behavior kids. So he and I agreed, and man, we were going to do that bill. And so we did it and we got it through. So when you're like-minded and you find the things that you agree on, that's when you accelerate.
May I add to that?
Yeah. Yes, please. I was going to ask if.
Where did those ideas and thoughts come from, Liz, or anybody else there? They come from the constituents. They come from businesses. They come from the phone call that comes into our office that is that passionate mama who I'm working with right now, who I have to tell her it can't start where we are, but let me put you in contact with someone in the city someone that's on a board, maybe related to the issue that she has. So many of these, if not all, come from we as constituents ourselves and the constituents within the districts or the state, whatever it might be.
And to just
I
kind of
would-
piggyback on Rochelle, kind of the best way for us to sum that up is, we like to say that sometimes we're people's first call because they don't know who else to call about something, or we're somebody's last call because they've tried anything and they're at the end of their rope. So it's not all, directed into going to making legislation, but a lot of times we're just connecting folks with other resources in the community, whether that's local government, nonprofits, we can be that resource too, and try to, if it's not something we can help with directly, as the federal government is so big, we try to put you in touch with the right folks so you can get the resources you need.
And just going along with that, I would say one thing that is hugely important to understand is that, in my case, Congresswoman Hinson is one of 435. In the Senate, their senator is one of 50. A lot of people call and have unrealistic expectations, to be quite honest, of what one person can do in the legislative process. And so just understanding that we don't have a magic wand and we can't just stop something on our own as far as our member of Congress or a member of the Senate. So just making sure that those expectations are realistic helps us, and it helps you as well not be disappointed if something can't get stopped or can't get pushed forward the way you might like it to.
Yeah, and like Andy mentioned, we're one of 100 in the Senate, but not only that, but for most bills, we have a 60 vote threshold in the Senate because of the filibuster rule. So it takes a lot of support for something to get done. And I know our state folks alluded to this, but those majority party committee chairs and the leadership of the majority party is what controls what gets brought up in committees and on the floor. So they get to decide if those bills get to come to a vote. And that's where that bipartisan work really comes in. Where our party's in the minority in the US Senate right now. And so we have to work across the aisle to get anything done. We have to have that support or it doesn't happen.
Thanks for correcting me, Brittany. I said one of 50, didn't I? 50 states,
That's okay.
100
That's
senators.
okay.
I'm on the House side, so I got that number right.
One thing quick, or two things quickly, Stephanie. First, Liz is so nice. She assumed I could be a chair. I'm not. And then the other thing is I'm going to put in the chat there's the bill tracking tool if anybody wants it. That's a good way, because Liz was saying that the number can change, all things can change about it. That tracking tool will track your bill from basically birth to death if you need it. So,
And if I can just add on a simple note, if Senator doesn't know what his constituents are thinking about, how does he know? So when you come to us, whether it be us, the House, the Senate, whomever you call, we will pass that along. We will try and help. We'll make that connection, as we said. But if he doesn't know, then he doesn't know. So please reach out.
We also have on my desk behind me, I have the dates of the session so I can keep it top of mind. So I know this is when it gets to different areas. And so we'll be sure to include that when we send a follow-up email to everybody out, just so they know this is when it might die, as like you said, and this is when you might want to address your congressperson about. So that kind of your point, Rochelle, kind of goes to my next question about staff. What role does staff play in educating or assisting the representatives? How do constituents work best with those staff and connect with them?
Can I go first on this?
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead, Representative.
So we have in the legislature, we have a part-time clerk person who is, helps us with the people that come in, some of our constituency email, but I think some of the others as well, I watch every email that comes in. And so I don't know if the staff thing really applies. Some people think we have a lot of staff. We have a caucus staff that helps the entire caucus, but personally, we have a part-time clerk for I think 15, 16 weeks, and they're very part-time sometimes. It's also been a little bit difficult with COVID. What was the thing that you said before? Yeah. So I wish we had a better answer, but we're pretty staff light. Some people think we have these grand offices in the districts and that we have a staff of 20 people, but it's just not like that. So again, it's the relationship building again with your legislator. Either that's text messaging, emailing, phone calling, meeting them, going to some of their meetings that they haven't seen them for coffee. But one thing on the last question, I just have to mention, when we're looking at the calendar for session, you really need to get your bill request in like in November, December. So LSA has the Legislative Service Agency for the House and the Senate. That's when we start formulating the bill. And then, so then when you see the calendar, that's when it takes to move through, but you really have to get your bill ideas into bill requests in November and December. That's just always really critical, because you can't just show up in January and say, hey, I want this bill. Well, we can't request a bill anymore. That funnel has passed, and there's just no bills to amend things on too. So that's a really critical step that I left out earlier. Thank you.
And they're evergreen bills. So if it's a taxation issue, so if it goes to Ways and Means, or if it is an appropriation, those are evergreen. What a legislator can do is they may say, a constituent may say to you, I have this issue. You can put a placeholder in December and probably early January, Kirsten, right? Like right before you go to session, and you can say, this is a bill, I want a placeholder. I'll send you information for drafting at a later date, and hold that. That means that you've already requested it. They know what area, which drafter to give it to, whether it's education or commerce or something like that. Then as you get more information, they will draft a bill for you. The individual deadline is at the end of January, but they will keep in contact with you, and you can kind of draft it as you move along. I have one bill that is an appropriations bill that I haven't even filed yet. It's on my desk right now, and we're looking through it and deciding how we're going to present it. And so just know that some of those bills are evergreen, but others are, you got to get it in. Just like Kirsten's Representative Running-Marquardt, is talking about, you have to get it in, and there is a deadline, and it's important for you to meet with people in the fall when the governor is even deciding her budget in October. She's having budget meetings with the directors of the departments then. So the sooner you get your idea into a legislator, the sooner they can get it drafted and it's ready to go in January.
So I'll kind of touch on the staff situation at the federal level, because it's a little bit different. We cover a bigger area, more constituents, more legislation passing through. So we have, the three of us on the federal level, we're all staff. We work for a particular member of Congress. And the three of our offices are set up pretty similarly. Here in the state, we kind of have two different teams or purposes. Rochelle, Andy, and I are focused more on outreach, that we spend our days meeting with constituents, with businesses, with local elected officials, our state officials, and making sure that the senators and representatives, that Iowans' voices are heard. We're here in Iowa so that we're close to those folks, and we're accessible, and we're here to stay connected and make sure that our members of Congress are trapped in that bubble that is DC. And all of our bosses come back to Iowa most every weekend. They're back all the time, also meeting with those folks, but they only have, so much time, and the majority of their job requires them to be at the Capitol. So that's why we're here. Rochelle alluded to this earlier too, but the other function of our state staff is casework, or our constituent services representatives. So I always try to make a plug in any public forum for our casework teams, because they work directly with constituents. So if you or someone is having an issue with the IRS, with Social Security, USDA. We're already, unfortunately, starting to get calls. I took a call earlier today from a family that's hosting a Ukrainian foreign exchange student. And she's concerned about her status in the US. Can she stay while things are dangerous, as well as her family in Ukraine? Is there things we can do to ensure their safety? So that individual is actually, she covers the whole state, but she's based here in Cedar Rapids, handles all of our immigration related casework. So, big issues like that, or, just a clerical issue on your tax return that you're not getting a response back. Those are things we work with. Now our legislative staff, they're mostly based in DC because that's kind of where the action happens. And so their jobs are broken up by a portfolio. So we have folks who specialize in healthcare, in agriculture, in you name it, foreign policy, all of those things. And so, kind of the best place to start, if you're here in Iowa, we're all here in Cedar Rapids. It's easy to find us, to get a hold of us, to stop by, start with us. And we don't cover particularly policy area. I like to say our knowledge is an inch deep and a mile wide. We kind of know a lot about a lot, but we can always bring in those those policy folks who are experts in their field if we need to.
Yeah, and I would say Brittany hit it spot on. I tell people all the time that I know just enough to get myself in trouble, but not enough to be as educated as maybe some people would like when it comes to the policy side of things. But that's not my job. And if you have a question, we are more than happy to get you in touch with the correct person on our team that does know the answer. We have a very talented legislative team in DC. Our offices, we have 3 offices in the district, one in Cedar Rapids, one in Waterloo, and one in Dubuque, and then of course the DC office. So spread out throughout the district. And just like the senator's office, we deal with, we have a district representative in each office, and then a caseworker that does the same type of thing. And we've already been hearing about the Ukraine thing. Another area we hear about a lot coming up, especially, is IRS issues. A huge area there, but also passports, because spring break's coming up and a lot of people traveling. And so those are other areas among many other areas that we deal with, any federal agency. So very similarly set up to the senator's office, and but we're an extension of our representative, whether it's the senator or congressperson. We're your direct link. So like Brittany was saying, it's a lot easier to stop by our office, to call our office, to get in touch with us, and then we can get you to the person who, if we don't know the answer, we can get you to the person who does.
Well, and we also are at events on behalf of our senators. So you might see us on a Saturday. You might see us on an evening event, or at an evening event. You might see me up in Alameda County and then back to Lynn County in the same day. It depends on the need. It depends on something that hasn't been brought up, but we all know how important listening is. So listening to what that need might be and being where we need to be for our senator, for our congressperson. We could be all over the place, but that is our job, and that's what we love doing for the constituents here in Iowa, for Senator Grassley. And there are a couple ways, as I mentioned, grassley.senate.gov, to go there and connect and fill out forms, whether it be immigration or whether it be casework. I believe you can do that as well. I believe with Congresswoman Hinson and Senator Ernst's office as well, and fill that out, and it will get to us within a day's time. And it will go to the appropriate area, one of our 6 offices, whoever handles that. In the same respect, because Cedar Rapids happens to be at the top of the list when you look up Senator Grassley's offices, we get calls from all over the state, and either we will direct them or we'll handle it very gently, depending on what it is, and make sure that it gets to the appropriate area.
And I want to go back to stress to what Representative Running-Marquardt said, and just in her first statement, was about relationships. Relationships are so important. Right away, people think, well, I want to change something. It's going to be in a piece of legislation. There are so many things that you can do on the ground knowing the resources that you have. So I see Paula Land on here, and with Catherine McCauley Center, and with the Afghanis that are coming, into our community. And if I've had volunteers call me and say, how can I help with this? Oh, well, I've got Paula's number. You could call Paula, make this happen, and then follow up to make sure that that volunteer did report, or try to get some traction there to help some of our nonprofits and our community in general. I've had many constituents who have, Medicaid issues. So I might call the legislative liaison, the lobbyist, to AmeriGroup or to Iowa Total Care and say, I've got this constituent that's having this problem. They're a member or they're a provider, they're not getting paid, or they're not being, they're not able to seek services. So connecting it on the ground level is one of the other things that we do. I know that the federal reps here who are talking about this are talking about maybe passport issues and things like that, but it can go beyond that too. It can go to real issues that are going to help people with their health care, maybe even in labor and delivery. I mean, I've had some people call me about issues around that, and those are things that you can solve on the ground. You don't need a bill to pass, something like that. You can work with people where they are and with the resources that because you've been out in the community a lot. And I know Kirsten's really good at that. She's got good connections, and Charlie too, good connections from his previous occupation. And that matters. That matters with your legislator.
Excellent. Well, I do want to respect our time, and I want to respect your time. And so thank you to our esteemed panelists for taking your time to speak with us today, especially understanding you're well on your way in our legislative season. And so we are thankful for your time and your expertise and your presence. The Civil Rights Commission, we're hoping to do this kind of workshop on an annual or biannual type basis to ensure that our residents do know how to become engaged and do know how to participate and fully activate their ability to connect with all of their legislators. So coming up soon, I do want to tell you about one other panel we're in the process of creating. Is relatively similar to this, but I'll be focusing on local for members of city council, members of Lane County supervisors, or school board and mayors. So we can, as a community, best understand and how to engage with the local policymakers. I would be remiss if I didn't give another plug for something else we're doing coming up. We're doing a virtual book discussion of the book Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram Kendi. Our first meeting is Monday, and February 28th at 6 p.m. However, if you have not read the book, that is okay. We have a second gathered on March 14th. And if you do need the book, we always buy extras, and we're happy to provide those. I did put the registration link in. We send out the follow-up email of this. We're going to include everybody's access to the individual representatives and senators' websites, as well to the bill tracking, and then of course to the links to register for civil rights issues. And so we want to make sure to get that out to everybody. So again, thank you to our panelists. It was a pleasure listening to you. I took so many notes along the way, and I'm relatively well versed in this, but there's so many ins and outs. So thank you for your expertise. And of course, thank you to our audience who took the time to participate and to listen, and for your interest. Your time is valuable, all of you, and we're grateful you chose to spend it with us. So with that, I will give, if there's any last moments. I don't know if we have 5 minutes left. I always leave like a couple of seconds if there's a couple of minutes, but thank you so much.
So I would just say,
I'd like to just say, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Representative.
I was just going to say thank you, Stephanie, for the invite, and you're always welcome at the Capitol if you want to come up there and see something while we're in session, you or anyone else from the city, of course. So thank you.
I'll make
Sorry,
that plug
Kirsten.
too, that's one of our favorite things that we do get to do. If you're ever traveling to DC, please call us. We can help line up tours. All of the, we do constituent coffees Wednesday morning, which are for Iowans, and you get to meet one-on-one with the senator, take a photo, all the fun stuff. So if you are ever planning a trip to DC, please let us know. We can help with that.
Thank you, Brittany.
I would like to say thank you for inviting me. And also, I'm looking at not only the panelists, you assembled a great group of panelists, but the attendees that are on here, like Wendy and Scott, Paula, the Schmidt family, Carl, Jennifer, Brett, like all of you have, dedicated much of your lives working to advance our community. And I just want to say publicly on this to all those folks who are attending the Zoom, thank you very much for the work that you've done and helping others advocate in your advocacy too. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you so much. Thanks for attending. I see a lot of familiar names in the attendees, so really appreciate your advocacy.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, Kelly, for all that you did to put this together as well. And for those participating, thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes, I would echo that same sentiment. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this very, very important topic and some of the tools that we have that are at your disposal. And we are here to serve you. So thank you so much for listening and for giving us this opportunity to share.
Well, again, it was certainly an honor and a pleasure getting to see all of you and to learn from all of you. Thank you for your service to our community. We are incredibly grateful for all the work that you do, and we know it's a lot. So thank you for your expertise and your time. With that, have a wonderful day. Stay warm and stay well. So thank you.
Yep. Have a good weekend.
You as well. Farewell.